Welcome back to Reddit Drama Unpacked. Tonight's story is not just about betrayal, it's about revenge executed with surgical precision. When Daniel's wife walked into that restaurant to leave him, she thought she had it all figured out. She never imagined who would walk through that door next. Stay tuned as we uncover one of the most ruthless tales of infidelity, greed, and karma catching up, faster and harder than anyone expected. The hum of the city faded as Daniel Mercer pulled his sleek black pickup into the driveway of his suburban Dallas home. The house stood proudly under the setting Texas sun, a custom-built two-story modern farmhouse with white panel siding and black trim. To any outsider, it was the picture of success, a symbol of everything Daniel had worked for. But tonight, as he stared at the warm lights glowing through the large windows, he felt a pit in his stomach that hadn't gone away in months. Daniel was 42, a self-made architect who built his business from nothing but grit, long nights, and an obsession with precision. Mercer Design wasn't just a company, it was his life's work. His name was on some of the most iconic custom homes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He had clients who trusted him with multi-million-dollar projects, colleagues who admired his talent, and employees who respected his no-nonsense leadership. And yet, despite the accolades, the wealth, the perfect image, his foundation was cracking. That foundation had a name: Eleanor, his wife of 14 years, his partner in building this life, the woman who once had stars in her eyes when she looked at him. But those stars had long since dimmed. Lately, when she looked at him, Daniel didn't see love. He saw distance, cold calculation, indifference. At first, he had dismissed it. Every marriage went through rough patches. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe they both were. Raising two kids while managing their busy lives was no easy feat. He told himself not to overthink it. But instincts, Daniel had always trusted his gut, and his gut told him something was very, very wrong. There were signs. The late nights that kept happening more often than work could reasonably explain. The constant text messages she never shared. The gym sessions that came out of nowhere. New designer clothes, new lingerie, perfume he never bought her, and the most damning thing, the way she hid her phone like it was national security classified. He wasn't naive, but he also wasn't impulsive. He chose to observe, collect, piece together a puzzle that was forming whether he wanted it to or not. Their conversations had grown hollow. They spoke about bills, schedules, school activities, but never about them. She avoided eye contact. Her affection felt rehearsed, robotic. Even the simple things, how she'd stopped calling him during the day, were like needles under his skin. It all came to a head 2 months ago. Daniel had come home earlier than usual that Thursday night. Elena wasn't expecting him. Her white BMW sat in the driveway, but the house was eerily quiet. No sounds of TV, no kids. They were with his mother for the night. No sign of Elena downstairs. That's when he noticed her phone, forgotten and unlocked on the kitchen island. He should have walked away. But something inside him snapped. His hand moved before his brain could intervene. A message preview blinked. Last night was amazing, same sweet next Tuesday, France Vincent. Daniel's heart stopped. He scrolled through the thread. Hundreds of messages, some sweet, most explicitly sexual, photos, videos, hotel bookings, dinner receipts. It wasn't a one-time thing. This had been going on for nearly 2 years. Vincent Cole. The name hit him like a punch to the gut. Vincent wasn't just some random fling. He was Daniel's former business rival, a cutthroat real estate lawyer who had tried to block Daniel from landing one of his largest projects years ago, a man who had cost him millions, who stood smiling and shaking Daniel's hand at charity galas while secretly stabbing him in the back. And now the man was sleeping with his wife. Daniel placed the phone back where he found it, mechanically, calmly. He didn't scream. He didn't rage. Because Daniel Mercer wasn't a man who reacted. He planned. As the sound of the shower upstairs stopped, Daniel leaned on the marble island, breathing deeply, steadying himself. He wouldn't confront her. Not yet. She thought she was smart. She thought she had him fooled. She was wrong. Very wrong. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed beside Elena, listening to the rhythm of her breathing as she slept soundly, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. She kissed him goodnight like nothing had changed, like she hadn't been sneaking around with another man for nearly 2 years. The audacity was staggering, but Daniel didn't react. Not yet. He knew that rage would only give her the upper hand. Confrontation would lead to denial, tears, or worse, her playing the victim. No, this needed to be handled with surgical precision. If she had spent years lying to his face, she would now spend months underestimating him while he built his case. At 6 a.m. sharp, Daniel was already dressed and in his home office. He sat in the dark, illuminated only by the soft blue glow of his laptop screen. A name blinked on the contact list: Marcus Holden, private investigator. Daniel had used Marcus once, years ago, to vet a business partner who was suspected of embezzlement. Marcus was discreet, ruthless, and best of all, impossible to fool. Daniel clicked call. The phone rang once. "Mercer," Marcus answered in a raspy voice. "No questions, no small talk, just business." "I need your services again," Daniel said, his voice flat, controlled. "Personal or professional?" "Both," Daniel replied coldly. There was a brief pause. Marcus knew better than to ask too many questions up front. "Give me the name." "Eleanor Mercer, my wife, and Vincent Cole." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Cole, that snake? Didn't think he was dumb enough to get sloppy." "He got greedy," Daniel said, "and now I want everything." "You're not looking for proof," Marcus said, his voice sharp with understanding. "You already have proof. I want evidence that buries them both: paper trails, financials, phone records, photos. I want to burn everything they've built together to the ground." Another pause. Then Marcus simply replied, "You'll have it." Within days, Marcus's team had started digging. They followed Elena's daily routines, tracked her car's GPS, pulled phone records, hacked cloud backups, and watched hotel check-ins under aliases. No detail was too small. And what they uncovered went far deeper than Daniel could have imagined. The affair wasn't just a secret romance. Elena had been systematically moving funds out of their joint accounts, small transfers, just a few $1,000s here and there, funneled through a series of shell accounts that all eventually led back to an offshore account Vincent had set up years prior. It wasn't just betrayal. It was financial sabotage. Worse yet, Vincent had manipulated her into thinking they were planning a future together, a future that involved draining Daniel's wealth while carefully building an exit plan to flee with Vincent once the money was sufficient. Daniel stared at the growing evidence like a man reading his own eulogy. Every photo, every text message, every transaction. The deception was surgical, cold, calculated, but now it was exposed. Marcus wasn't finished. A deeper dive into Vincent Cole's business dealings revealed a long trail of corruption. He had blocked minority-owned developers from projects, Daniel included. He had bribed city officials, manipulated property contracts, and used his legal firm as a laundering front for backdoor deals. Vincent wasn't just a homewrecker. He was a career predator, enriching himself by stepping on others. Marcus presented it all to Daniel in a thick black folder one evening at a quiet downtown bar. "It's all here," Marcus said, sliding the folder across the table. "This guy has ruined more lives than I can count. Yours wasn't the first, but if you want to be the last, now's your chance." Daniel stared at the folder, his mind racing through endless possibilities. His heartbeat was calm, but behind his cool exterior, the storm was building. He finally looked up. "We're going to bury them both." Daniel knew he couldn't bring down Vincent Cole and Elena alone. To destroy people that powerful, he needed leverage, and leverage meant allies. People who had also suffered under Vincent's schemes, but never had the chance or the courage to fight back. Luckily, Marcus had been one step ahead. Within days, he had compiled a list of former business associates, competitors, and partners Vincent had crossed over the years. People who had lost contracts, investors, and sometimes even their entire companies because of Vincent's predatory tactics. At the top of that list was Monica Patterson. Monica was a brilliant real estate developer who had once been on track to land a multi-million-dollar downtown redevelopment contract until Vincent stepped in. He blackmailed city officials, manipulated legal paperwork, and tanked her deal. Monica's company nearly collapsed and her reputation never fully recovered. She had every reason to hate him. Marcus set up the meeting, a private room at a small upscale restaurant outside the city, discreet, secure. When Daniel arrived, Monica was already seated, sipping a glass of wine, her sharp brown eyes fixed on him as he approached. "You've got guts asking for this meeting," she said calmly, but her tone carried weight. "Do you know how many people have tried to take Vincent Cole down? They always end up broke, or worse." Daniel took his seat across from her. "I'm not them," he replied simply. Monica studied him for a moment, as if gauging his sincerity. "I heard about your wife." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice stayed steady. "That's part of it. But this isn't just about revenge. This is about finally pulling the curtain back on who Vincent really is, and you are one of the few people who understands exactly what he is capable of." Monica's eyes narrowed. "You have proof?" Daniel reached into his briefcase and slid a thick black folder across the table. "Everything. Financial fraud, illegal wire transfers, offshore accounts, evidence of blackmail, phone records, photographic surveillance, and enough banking transactions to bury him 10 times over." Monica opened the folder. Her eyes moved over the documents slowly, methodically. The deeper she read, the more her expression changed, from skepticism to surprise, then to something far more dangerous, fury. "You've really done your homework," she said, her voice colder now. "You want him destroyed." "I want him stripped of everything he's stolen, and not just from me," Daniel said. Monica sat back, crossing her arms. "And what do you want from me?" "Connections," Daniel answered. "You still have influence in the city. You know the right people. The ones who can't stand Vincent but have always stayed quiet. I want them on my side. I want the public, the press, and every goddamn courtroom in the state watching when he falls." Monica smiled for the first time. "A full-blown public execution." "Exactly," Daniel replied, his voice like ice, "one that no one will forget." But Monica wasn't the only ally Daniel needed. Marcus had also found someone else, someone far more dangerous than even Monica. Her name was Valerie Grayson. Valerie wasn't a victim. She was once Vincent's most trusted associate, his fixer. She had cleaned up his messes for years, silencing whistleblowers, hiding financial irregularities, and arranging private settlements. But she had been cast aside when Vincent no longer needed her, tossed away like trash. And she wanted revenge. Daniel and Marcus met her in a secluded private office late one night. Valerie sat calmly behind the large desk, legs crossed, swirling a glass of bourbon. "You realize," she said with a sly smile, "if I help you, I'll be implicating myself." Daniel nodded. "You've got nothing left to lose." She raised her glass slightly. "That's where you're wrong. What I have left is my pride, and burning Vincent to the ground will give me more peace than money ever did." Valerie opened a safe behind her desk and pulled out 2 thick hard drives. She placed them on the desk like she was delivering weapons to an army. "Here's everything," she said. "Years of internal documents, hidden shell corporations, payments to city officials, bribes, wire transfers, illegal asset movements, names, dates, amounts, every single skeleton in Vincent Cole's closet." Daniel stared at the drives, the weight of it sinking in. This was no longer just personal revenge. This was systemic exposure. "Once we release this," Valerie continued, "he won't just lose his reputation. He'll lose his license to practice law, his freedom, his entire goddamn life." Daniel exhaled, steady and determined. "Good. That's exactly what I want." With Monica assembling the allies, Valerie supplying the evidence, and Marcus coordinating every detail, Daniel's plan was nearly complete. The final act would take place publicly, at Vincent's upcoming charity gala, an event designed to celebrate Vincent's career success, filled with politicians, business leaders, reporters, and the entire city's elite. The perfect stage for complete, irreversible humiliation. And Elena, she'd be standing right beside Vincent, blind to the fact that her world was already crumbling under her feet. Daniel stared at the black invitation card Marcus had slid across his desk. Vincent Cole Annual Foundation Gala, an evening of power and progress. Daniel smiled. "Let's see how powerful you feel when the world watches you fall." The night of the gala arrived like a storm. The Cole Foundation's annual event was always the highlight of the year for the city's elite. Politicians, CEOs, media moguls, and every influential person who mattered was in attendance. The ballroom inside the Grand Belmont Hotel sparkled beneath glittering crystal chandeliers. Waiters moved like shadows, delivering trays of champagne. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The air buzzed with the self-congratulation of the powerful, but beneath the glamorous surface, the trap was already in place. Daniel arrived precisely at 8 p.m. He stepped out of the sleek black car, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked confidently into the lion's den. His tailored tuxedo fit perfectly, and his calm expression masked the cold fury burning beneath his skin. Marcus, Monica, and Valerie were already inside, each positioned strategically throughout the ballroom. Monica was speaking to a small group of investors near the bar. Marcus was blending with the media crowd. Valerie, as always, remained invisible but present, watching everything from a shadowed balcony above. Everything was timed down to the second. Daniel's eyes scanned the room until they landed on Vincent and Elena. They stood at the center of attention, laughing, smiling, basking in the glow of their self-made empire. Vincent wore a custom midnight blue tuxedo, his arm wrapped possessively around Elena's waist. She wore a shimmering emerald gown that clung to her like a second skin. And yet, for the first time, Daniel noticed something different in Vincent's expression, a hint of unease, a flicker of nerves behind the mask of arrogance. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was guilt, or maybe deep down Vincent sensed something was coming. Elena, however, radiated pure confidence. She had no idea her entire world was about to shatter. Daniel made his approach. The crowd parted as he walked toward them. "Vincent," Daniel greeted with a polite smile, extending his hand. Vincent's lips tightened slightly as he shook it. "Daniel, I wasn't expecting you tonight." Daniel's voice was calm, almost friendly. "Why would I miss such a grand celebration? After all, tonight is historic." Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly, but he forced a chuckle. "Indeed it is." Elena stepped forward, her voice laced with venom, disguised as charm. "I'm surprised to see you, Daniel, but then again you always did have a flair for dramatic entrances." Daniel smiled at her, eyes cold. "Only fitting for a dramatic evening." As the speeches began, the room dimmed. A large screen behind the podium lit up as Vincent stepped on stage, ready to address the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vincent began, his voice smooth and commanding, "tonight we celebrate not only the achievements of the Cole Foundation, but also the strength of integrity, hard work, and ethical leadership." His words were cut off mid-sentence. The large screen behind him flickered, static buzzed, and then the footage began. A grainy video appeared, secret camera footage of private meetings, documents scrolling across the screen, wire transfers, bank statements, signed contracts. The audio kicked in, recordings of Vincent discussing fraudulent deals, blackmail schemes, and illegal financial manipulations. The audience gasped. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Vincent froze, his face draining of color. Whispers erupted. Phones came out. People began recording. Panic spread like wildfire. Daniel stood perfectly still, watching the carefully orchestrated collapse unfold. But this was only the beginning. As the footage played, another screen lit up on the opposite side of the ballroom. Valerie's voice came through crystal clear. "For years, Vincent Cole operated above the law, destroying businesses, silencing competitors, blackmailing city officials. But tonight the victims speak." One by one, testimonies appeared. Monica, Ava, Nadia, and others. They spoke directly to the camera, their voices firm. "I lost my business because I refused to play his game. He blackmailed me into silence. He ruined my career and threatened my family." The audience sat in stunned silence, the weight of the evidence crashing over them like waves. Vincent's composure shattered. He fumbled for the microphone, his voice desperate. This is a setup. These are lies." But no one believed him. The room had already turned against him. Security entered. Federal agents followed. An officer approached Vincent, holding out a warrant. "Mr. Cole, you're under arrest for fraud, racketeering, and obstruction of justice." Elena staggered backward, her face pale, eyes wide in horror. Vincent's face twisted as he was handcuffed on stage, the cameras capturing every humiliating second. Daniel slowly walked forward, standing at the foot of the stage. "You built your empire by stepping on others," Daniel said softly. "Now you get to watch it all collapse." Vincent locked eyes with him, filled with helpless fury as agents dragged him away. Eleanor, trembling, tried to approach Daniel, her voice cracking. "Daniel, I didn't know." He cut her off with a calm, lethal stare. "You knew. You just didn't care." And with that he turned his back to her, walking away as her entire world crumbled behind him. The media storm hit like a hurricane. By sunrise, every major news outlet had picked up the story. Headlines screamed across screens and newspapers. Billionaire Vincent Cole arrested in massive corruption scandal. Cole Foundation collapse. Secret recordings expose decade of fraud. Socialite Elena Cole implicated in financial crimes. Daniel stood in his living room sipping coffee as the morning news anchors dissected every detail. On the screen, they showed footage of Vincent being led away in handcuffs. His once flawless image was now shattered, face pale, hair disheveled, his arrogance finally stripped away. The anchor's voice rang out. "This marks one of the most significant takedowns of corporate corruption in the state's history. Federal investigators have confirmed multiple counts of fraud, racketeering, and financial manipulation. Sources say dozens of businesses may have been affected by Cole's criminal empire." The screen shifted to Elena. While not yet officially charged, Elena Cole's involvement is under investigation, particularly surrounding the siphoning of funds from joint accounts to secret offshore holdings. Daniel let out a long breath, setting his coffee down. The storm had only just begun for Vincent and Elena, but for him it was the calmest he had felt in years. By midday, Cole Industries' board of directors held an emergency press conference. The company was collapsing. The chairman spoke with carefully measured words, his face drawn tight with panic. "Effective immediately, Vincent Cole has been removed from all positions of authority. We are cooperating fully with federal investigations. We deeply regret the betrayal of trust inflicted upon our clients, employees, and investors." The stock price plummeted. Investors fled. Lawsuits piled up overnight from former partners, employees, and government agencies. Meanwhile, Elena's once glamorous social circle disintegrated instantly. Her so-called friends, who had once gushed over her lavish parties and designer outfits, now treated her like a contagious disease. The women who fought to sit beside her at charity galas were now blocking her calls. Brands and sponsorships that once flaunted her image quietly erased her from their campaigns. She had fallen hard. That evening, Daniel sat on his balcony watching the sun disappear behind the Austin skyline. The knock at the door didn't surprise him. He opened it to find Eleanor standing there. But this was not the same radiant, untouchable Eleanor. This was a woman who had been stripped bare. Her designer coat looked cheap now. Her makeup was smeared as if she had been crying for hours. Her hair clung to her face, disheveled. "Daniel," she whispered, voice broken. He said nothing, just waited. Tears brimmed in her eyes. I didn't come here to argue. I don't know where else to go." Daniel's voice was calm, cold. "You're not here because you feel guilty, Elena. You're here because you have nothing left." Elena's chin trembled as she stepped forward. "I was stupid," she whispered. "I thought we could have it all. I thought Vincent would protect me. I never imagined it would end like this." "You thought I'd always be here," Daniel replied. "You thought you could betray me and I'd still save you when the house burned down." She choked on a sob, shaking her head. "I lost everything, Daniel. My name, my home, my life." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You lost your soul long before you lost your status." For a moment they stood in silence. Then she whispered, desperate, "Is there any way you can forgive me?" Daniel's eyes darkened. "No." The word hit like a hammer. "I rebuilt my life without you, and now you'll live in the ruins you helped create." Eleanor's breath broke as she stumbled backward, realizing there would be no redemption, no mercy. And Daniel, without another word, closed the door. Weeks passed. The world moved on, but Daniel's life had entered a new chapter. In his garage, the soft hum of tools filled the air as he sanded down a slab of walnut wood. The rhythmic scrape of sandpaper was therapy, steady, reliable, unlike the chaos his life had endured. When the scandal first broke, people had whispered. Friends, colleagues, neighbors, everyone had opinions, but eventually their attention shifted. What remained was Daniel's quiet resilience. His custom furniture business, once a side project, flourished. Orders flooded in. Word spread quickly. Daniel Prescott's pieces weren't just furniture, they were art, solid, handcrafted, honest. Unlike his marriage. One afternoon, as Daniel was finishing a large oak dining table, a knock came at the workshop door. He wiped his hands and opened it. There stood Sophie Chambers. Sophie was the owner of a small independent bookstore downtown. Daniel had done custom shelves for her shop months ago. What started as simple commissions had slowly grown into casual conversations, coffee breaks, and a quiet familiarity. But this visit felt different. "Hey," she smiled, slightly hesitant. "Hope I'm not interrupting." Daniel smiled softly. "Never. Come in." She stepped into the workshop, her eyes wandering across the finished and half-finished pieces. She paused at the massive oak table. "This is beautiful," she said softly, running her hand across the smooth surface. "Thanks. Commission for a family up in Georgetown." Sophie glanced at him. "You've been busy." Daniel nodded. "It keeps me sane." There was a brief silence, comfortable but charged. "I saw the news," Sophie finally said, her voice careful. "About everything." Daniel's expression didn't shift. He had grown used to it. "Yeah," he answered simply. Sophie looked directly at him. "You know, most people wouldn't have come out of that storm like you did." He chuckled dryly. "Most people don't get much choice." "No," she disagreed, her voice firm but gentle. "You chose to rebuild. You chose to stand up when you could have let it crush you." Daniel exhaled, the tension loosening in his shoulders. Sophie always had a way of saying exactly what needed to be said without dressing it up. "You're stronger than you realize, Daniel." He held her gaze for a moment longer than usual. For months he'd kept walls up, afraid to let anyone in after what happened with Elena. But Sophie was different. No games, no hidden motives, no betrayal lurking beneath kind words. Just Sophie. They sat on the small bench Daniel had built in the corner of the workshop, sipping coffee. The late afternoon sun streamed through the high windows, casting soft golden light around them. "You ever think about expanding your business?" Sophie asked, breaking the quiet. Daniel smiled. "You're not the first person to suggest that." "You should," she said. "You've got something real here." He nodded slowly. "Maybe. One step at a time." She looked down into her coffee cup before glancing back up at him. "You deserve good things, Daniel." The words caught him off guard. So simple, yet so powerful. For a long moment, they just sat together, breathing in the silence. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice quieter. "After everything, it's hard to believe I do sometimes." Sophie reached out, resting her hand gently over his. "You do." The contact was light, yet intimate. Daniel felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Across town, Vincent's world kept unraveling. Federal indictments were stacking up, wire fraud, tax evasion, racketeering. Witnesses came forward in waves, many emboldened by Charlotte's investigation and Camille's airtight casework. His former business partners turned on him quickly, each desperate to save themselves. The once feared billionaire now sat alone inside a cold federal holding cell, stripped of his tailored suits and private jets, awaiting trial that could land him behind bars for decades. As for Elena, she had been left adrift. Her accounts frozen, her assets seized, her name toxic. The last whispers Daniel heard spoke of her barely surviving, staying in a small apartment, trying to avoid both creditors and former friends who now wanted nothing to do with her. The social queen of Austin had become invisible, and Daniel? He simply focused on the wood beneath his hands. And the woman now sitting quietly beside him, reminding him that life, even shattered, could be rebuilt stronger than before. As the months passed, Daniel's life steadily rebuilt itself brick by brick. His furniture business grew beyond what he had ever expected, and his relationship with Sophie deepened into something stable, real, built on trust and simplicity. But trouble wasn't done with him yet. One morning, Daniel was in the workshop finishing up a large commissioned bed frame when the doorbell rang. Standing outside was a man in a suit, stiff posture, cold eyes. He handed Daniel a thick envelope. "Mr. Prescott, you've been served." Daniel took it, already knowing. He didn't need to open it to guess the contents. Vincent Hale was making his final move. Inside the envelope was a full civil lawsuit. Vincent was suing for defamation, damages to his reputation, loss of income, emotional distress. The usual desperate Hail Mary for a man sinking beneath the weight of his own crimes. Daniel sat down at his kitchen table, reading through the paperwork. The legal jargon tried to sound authoritative, but the desperation leaked from every page. Vincent's public fall had been complete. His financial empire lay in ruins. He was facing multiple federal indictments. His name was poison in every business circle. And yet, rather than face his own consequences, Vincent was grasping at one final attempt to strike back. Daniel couldn't even muster anger anymore, only a kind of dry amusement. It was pathetic. Daniel picked up his phone and called Camille. She answered immediately. "I take it you got served?" "I did," Daniel replied calmly. He heard Camille chuckle. "He's predictable, isn't he?" "Desperate men always are." Camille's voice sharpened. "Don't worry. He just handed me the last nail for his own coffin." Daniel leaned back, sipping his coffee. "I figured you'd say that." "I've been expecting this move," Camille continued, her tone cool and calculated. "We have more than enough to shut this down and bury him for good." A few weeks later they met in court. Vincent arrived looking like a shadow of the man he used to be. His suit still expensive, but his posture was tight, nervous. The arrogance was gone, replaced by barely concealed desperation. Daniel sat quietly with Camille beside him, calm, steady. Vincent's lawyer droned on for nearly 30 minutes, spewing exaggerated claims of character assassination and financial ruin. When it was Camille's turn, she didn't waste words. She stood, composed, powerful. "Your Honor," she began, her voice echoing cleanly through the silent courtroom. "The defendant's claims are not only baseless but entirely self-inflicted. The public exposure of Mr. Hale's crimes is a result of his own fraudulent actions, not malicious intent by my client." She presented emails, she played voice recordings, she handed over sealed affidavits from former business partners who had flipped on Vincent in exchange for leniency. And then she dropped the final piece. "Furthermore, Your Honor, attached are federal investigation documents confirming the ongoing criminal proceedings against Mr. Hale, including wire fraud, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice." Vincent paled, his hands trembling. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved it off. The verdict came swiftly. The lawsuit was dismissed, with prejudice. And, just like that, Vincent's final attempt to claw back power evaporated completely. The next morning, national news exploded. Vincent Hale's lawsuit dismissed. Criminal charges proceed. Every remaining business associate abandoned him overnight. His assets had already been frozen, and with the failed lawsuit, his last legal shield was gone. Vincent's once gilded empire had crumbled into dust. By the end of the month, federal agents led him out of his mansion in handcuffs. His trial would begin soon, but everyone already knew the outcome. That evening, Daniel sat on his back porch. Sophie joined him, carrying 2 mugs of tea. She smiled as she handed him one. "It's over, isn't it?" Daniel nodded. "It is." They sat together in silence, watching the stars blink into existence in the night sky. For so long his life had been filled with betrayal, revenge, and battles he never wanted to fight. But now, finally, there was peace. And beside him sat someone who never once asked for anything except his honesty. For the first time in years, Daniel Prescott smiled not because he had won, but because he was finally free. The courtroom battle was over. The media storm had passed. And yet one final confrontation remained. Daniel had not heard from Emily since Vincent's downfall. She had vanished into the wreckage of her own choices. jobless, broke, and socially exiled. But he knew eventually she would show up. People like Emily always did. And one cold November evening she did. The knock came after sunset. 3 sharp taps against his front door. Daniel stood in the living room for a moment, staring at the door. His instincts told him exactly who it was. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't bitter. He was simply ready. He opened the door. There she was. Emily stood on his porch, shivering slightly in the cool air. Her once perfectly styled blonde hair was unkempt, her eyes hollow, framed by dark circles. The woman who once sat across from him in that upscale restaurant, poised, confident, cruel, was gone. Before him now stood a broken version of that woman, stripped of her illusions. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice cracking like old glass. "Please, can we talk?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her, every detail of her defeated posture, the slight trembling in her fingers. This was no longer the woman who had mocked him. This was a woman who had lost everything. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Say what you need to say." Emily's lips quivered as she struggled to compose herself. "I've made terrible mistakes," she began, eyes pleading. "I destroyed everything. I betrayed you. I don't even know who I became. Vincent used me. I thought we were building something, but he—" Daniel cut her off, his tone sharper now. "You thought you were building something while stealing from your husband? While funneling my money into his accounts? While humiliating me in public?" Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking very clearly, Emily," Daniel said, stepping closer. "You calculated every transfer. You planned the entire affair. You rehearsed that night at the restaurant. Don't insult me by pretending this was some impulsive mistake." She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. She knew he was right. Every word. "I didn't come here to fight," she whispered. "I came because I have nothing left. My family won't talk to me. My friends abandoned me. My accounts are frozen. I've lost everything." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, you have." Her voice became desperate, trembling. I need somewhere to stay, just for a while, until I figure things out." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. And then Daniel laughed, not cruelly, not bitterly, simply with clarity. "Emily," he said softly, "this door you're standing at, it closed the moment you chose Vincent. It locked when you stole from me. And it sealed forever the night you walked into that restaurant and told me you were leaving." He took a breath. "There's nothing left here for you." Her face crumpled, full of panic now. "Please, Daniel, I have nowhere else." He stared at her for a long moment, and then with complete peace he simply said, "That's not my problem." Without another word, he gently closed the door, leaving her standing there in the cold, alone with her choices. Weeks later, the snow had started to fall in soft layers across the town. Daniel was in his workshop, sanding the final touches on a new custom order. Sophie entered, her cheeks flushed from the cold, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She smiled as she handed him one. "Busy as always, Mr. Prescott?" He grinned. "Keeping my hands busy keeps my mind clear." She sat beside him on the workbench, watching him with admiration. "You've come a long way," she said softly. "You should be proud." Daniel paused for a moment, reflecting. "I am." He looked around, at the growing business he built from nothing, at the woman who stood by him without expectation or demand, at the peaceful life that had replaced chaos. "I really am." Sophie leaned in and kissed his cheek, whispering, "And the best part, this is only the beginning." Daniel smiled. "Yes, Sophie. This is just the beginning." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a fresh, clean blanket. And for the first time in his life, Daniel Prescott knew what true freedom felt like. Months had passed. The chaos of the past year had finally settled. Daniel's furniture business was thriving. His kids had adjusted, happy and safe in their new life. And Sophie had become his partner, not just in business, but in life. Their home was filled with warmth, laughter and stability. But one final thread from the past still dangled. The text came late one night. Daniel was closing up the workshop when his phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Please, just one conversation. I need closure. Emily." He stared at the screen for a long moment. His first instinct was to delete it. But then he paused. Closure. That word had weight. Daniel wasn't doing this for her. He was doing it for himself. They met at a small neutral cafe, far away from the city, away from memories. A place with no history between them. When Daniel arrived, Emily was already seated in the corner. She looked even thinner than before, her face pale and drawn. The spark that once made her the center of any room had been completely extinguished. She stood as he approached, but Daniel simply gestured for her to sit. "Let's not make this dramatic, Emily," he said flatly. She nodded, folding her hands in front of her like a child about to confess. "Thank you for coming." Daniel didn't respond. He waited. Emily swallowed hard before speaking. "I know you probably don't believe this, but I do regret everything, not just the affair, everything." He remained silent, letting her continue. "I let greed blind me. I let Vincent manipulate me. I thought I was escaping something, but I was only digging my own grave." Tears filled her eyes. "I lost you. I lost the kids. I lost myself." Daniel finally spoke, his voice steady. "No, Emily. You didn't lose me. You threw me away." She flinched at his words. "I built everything for us," he continued. "I gave you my loyalty, my love, my trust, and you spit on it. For what? For money, for status, for the thrill of deception?" Emily's lip trembled. "I didn't know how to fix it once it started." "You fix it by not starting." His words cut like steel. Emily's tears finally broke free, streaming down her face. "I miss our family. I miss the life we had." Daniel exhaled slowly. "That life is gone, Emily. You destroyed it. And now I have a new life, a better one." He thought of Sophie, the warmth in their home, the smiles of his children. "You know what hurts the most," Daniel added, his voice softer now, almost sad. "That I don't even hate you anymore. You don't matter to me now." Emily looked like she might collapse under the weight of those words. Is there truly no chance? Not even for friendship?" Daniel shook his head gently. "No, you made your choice, and I've made mine." He stood up, ready to leave. "This is closure, Emily. You wanted it. Now you have it." As he turned to walk away, Emily whispered one last plea. "Daniel, I loved you." He paused only for a moment before responding, not turning back. "No, Emily, you loved yourself." And with that, Daniel walked out of her life forever. That evening, Daniel sat on the porch with Sophie, the kids playing inside. The stars sparkled above them in the clear night sky. Sophie noticed his calm expression and smiled. "Are you finally free?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. "I am." He took Sophie's hand, squeezing it gently. "The past doesn't own me anymore. I buried it tonight." Sophie leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then let's build the future." Daniel smiled, staring into the endless sky above. "That's exactly what we'll do." The chapter had closed, and a new one had already begun.